Come, let's go down to the river. I'd like to tell you a story about a place where I did a lot of growing up, where I made my first film, and where I have come back to learn again after being away for 20 years. It's a story of a middle-aged walkabout on the river of my youth, a quest to understand the place where I live, to learn the geography, the natural environment, and the cultural history of this place that has been so important to me and to thousands of others. It's a story that reaches into the past to examine humanity's evolving relationship with the land. It's also a story that celebrates the present, the beauty and richness of the habitat, the joy and meaning that people find here today. And it's a story that looks to the future, while paying tribute to some of the people who have worked to open the canyon, protect it from damming, and hold a 39-mile stretch in trust for future generations. So I invite you to come with me into the watershed of the South Yuba River, to see, to listen, to experience some of the discoveries made on this adventure. Early into the journey, I realized that I didn't understand the full meaning of a word that was basic to my search. But it wasn't long before I met a young woman who enlightened me.
A watershed is a concept which is used to define a place in which all the water flows down into one river, one stream. A watershed can be the watershed of one stream from ridgetop to ridgetop that flows into that stream. Or a watershed can be from ridgetop to ridgetop of a river, all the streams in that system flowing into that river. Or a watershed can be these larger rivers falling into a basin in which a larger river like the Sacramento River flows out to sea. Or a watershed can be a particular ocean in which the many streams flow into the rivers, flow into the larger rivers, and flow into that ocean. Or a watershed can be the earth.
Until then, I had never thought of our planet as one interconnected body of watersheds, with millions of veins and capillaries, not unlike our own bodies. My little watershed, the South Yuba, has been flowing in its present channel for about 3 million years, cutting into the western slope of the Sierra Nevada mountains in Northern California. The river begins as a tiny flow on the peaks at Donner's Summit. It is first called Yuba, where it passes through the Sugar Bowl Ski Resort and into Summit Valley. Then westward along Interstate 80, powerful with snow runoff in the spring, small and peaceful for most of the year. About 20 miles downstream, the natural flow of the Yuba is stopped at Spalding Dam, where most of the upper watershed runoff is diverted for human use, carried out of its natural channel by 2 large canals. Below the dam, the diminished river starts to grow again. Tributary watersheds feed into the Yuba as it flows down a narrow, semi-wild canyon, once famous for its gold, now loved for its beauty. It flows unimpeded for another 39 miles, passing through one surviving Gold Rush village, underneath 6 bridge crossings, and through a wildlife habitat with some of the most remarkable trails and swimming holes in the world. The final crossing at Bridgeport is site of the nation's longest single-span covered bridge and headquarters for a developing state park. Just downstream, the South Yuba joins the middle and north forks of the Yuba behind Englebright Dam. Below the dam, the main stem of the river provides one of the last natural spawning grounds for salmon and steelhead in the entire Central Valley watershed. On it flows over a diversion dam where more water is taken out for agriculture, then on to Marysville and Yuba City. Here the Yuba enters the Feather River, which flows southward into the Sacramento River and more water diversion. Then through the Delta, into the San Francisco Bay and out the Golden Gate, to mix with all the waters of the Pacific Ocean, all the elements of the global watershed, before rising into the air as clouds, to repeat the magical water cycle that is the lifeblood of our planet. The Yuba is named for the Yupu band of the Maidu Nishinan people, whose ancestors first came to the river about 6,000 years ago. Over the centuries, they developed a broad base of knowledge and skills that enabled them to live using only the materials found in their local ecosystems. Life was driven by the seasons, rushed and full sometimes, calm and easy at others. The human population was small, their touch on the earth was light, and their survival required an intimate understanding of the land, its plants and animals. This was the way of life for thousands of years. But in 1844, an omen of change came to the South Yuba. Elisha Stevens, a trapper from Missouri, guided the first wagons over the steep Sierra Nevada into the headwaters of the South Yuba. The granite plateaus of the river canyon provided a rugged path down the western slope toward the Central Valley. This primitive road became known as the Truckee route of the Immigrant Trail, made famous by the Donner Party tragedy of 1846. The first maps show confusion about the Yuba's name: Juber Creek, Yuber River. And for 5 years, the small number of settlers who used the trail had little effect on the river or its inhabitants. But in January of 1848, in a nearby watershed, a discovery was made that would change the entire region forever. Gold! Gold! Gold!
Oh, California, that's the land for me. I'm going to California, the gold dust for to see. I'll scrape the mountains clean, my boys, drain the rivers dry. I'll scrape the mountains clean, my boys, drain the rivers dry.
The rush was on. Thousands came from all over the planet, mostly young men at first, seeking adventure, freedom, and fortune. Not coming to settle the land, but to strike it rich and return home as heroes. Almost overnight, the moral code and plundering zeal of the industrial age took control of the region. Nature was seen as a collection of resources to be conquered and exploited. The Maidu Nishinan were run off of prime land or murdered. Almost anything could be done in the name of money. During the years of the gold rush, communities formed around the wealth. Families started to settle. Some dreams came true, but many more ended in frustration and failure. The gold that was easy to find was gone quickly. Then harder work and better tools were needed for success. Each technological advancement took a toll on the river, increasing the amount of earth that could be excavated and washed into the waterways. In some diggings, the landscape was completely altered by large industrial operations. In other places, miners began to tunnel underground in their search for gold. But for the South Yuba, the most devastating technology was invented near the town of Nevada City, just 10 miles away from the river. The year was 1853. The invention was hydraulic mining, and it would have a tremendous impact on the history of the watershed and eventually on the development of environmental law. At first, this form of mining seemed like an ingenious labor-saving idea for working low-grade gravel beds high up the canyon. One man could do the work of 50. The digging, transporting, and washing of dirt were all done with water. After the gold was removed, the tailings were flushed downstream in a muddy gruel. Water companies made fortunes, building dams and hundreds of miles of flumes and ditches. The engineering was remarkable, and the demand for water seemed endless, as dozens of open-pit mines employed thousands of workers. Mountains were literally washed away. For 30 years, the South Yuba ran clogged with gravel and clay. In some places, the debris was over 100 feet deep. Profit was high, but environmental damage downstream was overwhelming. Fields and towns in the Central Valley were flooded with what farmers described as slickens of mud. Navigable river channels were filled, and valley residents organized to stop what they called an outrage against nature. After years of legal battles, the issue came before a man who in earlier times had been a gold miner himself. By 1884, Lorenzo Sawyer had become the 9th District Circuit Judge, who delivered a compassionate 3-hour decision decreeing that hydraulic mining must cease unless safe, effective dams could permanently impound the tailings debris. The miners screamed injustice. Sawyer was seen as a notorious traitor. But in the valley, people rejoiced. The headlines of the Sacramento Bee praised the judge. As it turned out, his decision was a landmark ruling, one of the first cases in which a downstream watershed was protected from environmental abuse caused by an upstream industry. Slowly, hydraulic mines were forced to close. Some communities made difficult economic adjustments as jobs were lost and people moved away. But underground hard rock mines continued to thrive with a new influx of workers and capital. Many small mines were active on the river. The canyon was alive with activity between camps and villages. In nearby Grass Valley and Nevada City, large mines employed thousands, making Nevada County one of the richest regions in the gold country. The need for power in these mines brought a new technology to the South Yuba, asking yet another sacrifice of the river. In 1896, a small dam was built on the South Yuba to divert water to the Rome hydroelectric power plant a few miles downstream. This was the birthplace of a company that would later become known as Pacific Gas and Electric. By 1910, PG&E had closed this little plant and purchased many of the dams and flumes from the hydraulic mining era. The company then went on to build Spalding Dam, at the time the largest dam and diversion project in the world. The South Yuba had become an important part of the power supply for Northern California. But the river's downstream flow and ecosystem were radically altered forever. The new power brought engineering innovation and increased productivity to the mines. The economy was booming. But again, the rivers and streams paid a price, running chalky gray with effluent and chemicals from the processing of ore. The hard rock mines and the communities they employed flourished, even through the Great Depression of the 1930s. But in 1942, a major economic change occurred in the region, as a War Powers Commission closed gold mines to divert workers and capital into the production of minerals and materials needed for World War II. For economic reasons, very few mines would ever reopen, and none would stay open for very long. Again, jobs were lost, and mining communities made painful economic adjustments. Lumber was to become the next major industry in the South Yuba watershed. Sawmills had always been part of the local economy, providing timber for mines and lumber for building. But processing logs was labor-intensive and slow. Places close to roads and rails were heavily cut, but most of the steep canyons remained relatively untouched. The 20th century brought new technology and equipment that opened more of the forest to exploitation. When the gold mine shut down in the 1940s, sawmills opened up or expanded. By the 50s, the industry was in full swing as the post-war housing boom pushed the demand for lumber. The forest seemed to be a vast resource that could never be exhausted. For 3 decades, timberland was managed primarily to meet the desires of industry and a society hungry for building materials. By 1980, most of the old-growth, high-yield timber was gone. But when a new administration in Washington called for greater productivity from an already depleted national forest, clear-cut logging was increased dramatically. This was the culminating abuse to the forest, destroying habitat, flushing sediment and herbicides into the river. The attitude was reminiscent of hydraulic mining. As the forest began to look like a patchwork quilt, citizens organized to speak out against the injustice. When the Tahoe National Forest Service asked for public comment on a new management plan, thousands of letters poured into the local office. After a great deal of political and scientific work, clear-cutting was eliminated on public land in the region. Forest management has changed somewhat, beginning to recognize the limits of the resource and the need for a broader ecological perspective. The goal now is to protect the habitat while moving toward a smaller, sustainable yield of timber. Today, the watershed continues to give to the human community, not only in timber and gold, but in many other ways as well. The old Immigrant Trail on the upper South Yuba has evolved to become one of the most important transportation corridors in California history, including the Central Pacific Railroad and its modern descendants, the Lincoln Highway, US 40, and today's Interstate 80. For each roadway, the South Yuba watershed has made sacrifice. The hydroelectric and water diversion industries in the watershed have expanded over the years to include 26 storage dams and 3 diversion canals that feed several power plants and supply huge amounts of water to California every year. And even today, the Yuba pays a toll to the hydraulic mining era. The century-old wounds have not healed very well and continue to bleed silt into the river when it rains. But a major impact occurred in 1940, when a powerful mining lobby won federal funding to build a tailings dam for the rebirth of hydraulic mining. It was never used much for its intended purpose. But the real tragedy is seen in this picture. These salmon were caught in the South Yuba in the 1930s. An insignificant, unnecessary dam stopped the salmon, steelhead, and lamprey eel migration that for centuries was part of the life cycle on all 3 forks of the Yuba. Over the last 150 years, we have taken a great deal from this river and the natural world with little concern or gratitude. It was just the way of the times. But in the 1960s and 70s, a new awareness about our planet started to grow, and a new wave of immigrants began moving into the watershed of the South Yuba. A diverse and different kind of immigrant than ever before, young and old. From counterculture to retired military. From back-to-the-land pioneers to conservative families looking for small-town values. Many came from areas they had seen despoiled by rapid development and overpopulation. They came looking for a better way of life, a cleaner environment, a deeper connection to place. With them came new intellectual and spiritual ideas, some a little threatening at first, but slowly tolerance grew and the newcomers assimilated, joining with long-term residents to develop a stronger voice in matters of community change and environmental protection. The South Yuba has benefited from this new attitude. Now people know the river not for its gold or resources, but for its rich habitat, for the recreation it provides and the joy it brings. Because today, the Yuba is appreciated and loved for its inherent beauty and wonders. Come, let's go down to the river and listen to the story of the Yuba today, as it is told in the 39 miles of free-flowing water between the two dams. It's a place where dogs fetch more than sticks, where damsels share the water with trolls, and where some gold miners are just a little different. It's a story found in riverbanks that have nearly recovered from the abuse of the industrial age. It's a story seen in all the plants and animals who make their home in this canyon. And it's a story told in the faces, thoughts, and words of people who have been inspired, rejuvenated, or entranced by this river. They come from all walks of life. They come for many different reasons, but most of them share a common love and respect for the wonders and the gifts of the Yuba.
Well, it's really easy for me to talk about the Yuba because I love it.
It's totally unspoiled. You can still come here and it's like being part of nature.
And it's one of the nicest places I've ever seen in my life.
A beautiful river that's still clear.
It's one of God's creations.
The nature is beautiful, and you can go hiking.
It's a beautiful spot to come and picnic.
For me personally, what it's done for me, it changed my life.
You know, there's a place there for everybody.
I love the Yuba.
I just love the water. The water is so clear. I mean, you can see it's 20 feet out there, but you can see to the bottom.
I was just really amazed at the emerald green color of the water when I first came here, and the coolness of it.
And I think that the kinetics of water movement is really at heart of what brings people to a wild river like the Yuba River. And I think that movement of nature in constant motion, that carries with it a real magic, I think.
The swimming's wonderful. The water's the temperature's perfect, it's refreshing, gives us a time to break away from normal patterns and routines and do something relaxing and meaningful together. And
to have this wonderful swimming river. It's probably one of the finest swimming rivers in the entire Sierra Nevada.
The rocks are great for lying on, the waters are great as a natural spa. You can let them run down your shoulders and it just makes you feel tingly all over.
And because the water is warm, it really seems like it's a very enchanting place. It's almost magical. The pools and rocks. And the South Yuba has been called swimming bliss, was one person told me.
I learned about this swimming bliss from my Little League coach when I was 12 years old. But for me, it was always the rocks of the Yuba that amazed me most.
You know, I don't know any other river where the boulders are so sculpted and smooth. They remind me of Henry Moore sculptures, the way they're so just these smooth, round, polished forms. They're so abstract and so beautiful.
I love rocks, and sometimes I come up here and I don't even care to go in the water. I just want to climb the rocks.
There's something sensual about the rocks, too, the way they're smoothed out by the river's waters over the years.
They're very soft. I don't know how a rock can be soft, but they are. They're very comfortable, just like chairs. You know, you can just sit right down in the rock and dangle your feet in the water. And
you know, you lay on those long white boulders, and there's so much heat in them. And you've been in the water for a long time, and you can maybe trail one hand in the water and wrap your fingers around the rounded part of the rock. There's hardly any other place that has such wonderful flat boulders to lie on. It's part of the river experience.
You know, rock hopping is it's a combination of speed, grace, and agility.
Jumping from one rock to the next, to the next, to the next. And at any given moment you could miss and slip, which I've done a number of times. I've broken fingers. You're jumping. You're trying to see how far you can jump. You're trying to see if you can make it to the next rock. And it's just exhilarating.
Leaping from rock to rock and feeling like Spider-Man and being in total control of your body. And it's incredibly awesome.
Rocks and water are the basic elements of the Yuba. All along the river, they join together with remarkable grace and beauty.
The other thing I like about it is that the character of the river is such that it has pools. You can go from one pool to the next, and that's kind of very enjoyable.
Each hole is unique. The rocks change, the colors of the water changes, the vegetation changes, and the feeling that you get from being at the different spots changes as well.
There's so many wonderful pools amidst rocks, and there are secluded beaches, so everybody can find a place that they feel is their own.
Stephen, I have been to the 7 sacred pools in Maui, and they don't compare to this. They just don't compare.
You just come across pool after pool, and I'd say there's probably a few thousand sacred pools on this stretch of the river.
And the beauty of the pools is they go down in different colors, and then each one has its own little drama. Each little pool has a completely different mood about it, and then a little waterfall. Some of them you can ride down, and it gets a little exciting there. They're wondering.
The river float has become an art form on the Yuba. Novices use inner tubes and air mattresses to find their way downstream from one pool to the next. But the masters are body floaters. They know sections of the river so well that their bodies flow almost one with the water, gliding effortlessly over the rocks, through the rapids, down the falls, from pool to pool, like a native fish. There are all kinds of ways to get into these pools. You can wade, you can jump, you can swing, you can flip, you can flop, you can run, you can slide, and if you're careful, you can even fly. But no matter how you get into the river, be careful. 2 of my contemporaries were paralyzed for life after careless dives at the Yuba. When in doubt, jump. And always check the depth of the water, because rocks and sandbars can shift from one year to the next. Start low and work your way up the rocks. Listen to your heart and not the voice of your peers. Be wise and be careful when you come to the Yuba.
discovered is that the Yuba is really important for habitat for wildlife. It's such a long corridor that's really undeveloped. There are a few roads that cross it. But other than that, there's little human intrusion, and that's very important for all of the wildlife.
And it's just crystal clear. To fish here, you have to sneak up on the hole. You just can't walk right up to it, because if you can see the fish, they can see you. That's what my great-grandfather used to always tell us as little kids.
The Yuba is a very rich area for wildlife. The squaw, so-called squawfish that are in the Yuba are amazingly shark-like, aggressive, and actually pretty much fun to catch too, and they taste pretty good.
The wildlife is phenomenal. The spring times are just fantastic. The discovery, every day there's a new discovery of some kind. You see a new insect, or you see the bald eagles up flying around on that ledge there, and they're there.
And I love the Yuba River and the deep canyons and the hillsides of wildflowers in spring. They're one of the most beautiful hillsides and canyon areas in all of California. In late March through April, the hillsides come alive with the color of lupins and poppies and little pink monkey flowers. We have bush lupins that will surround you with purple along the trail. And then later on in the season, in summer, the hillsides are covered with yellow daisies and various other flowers. And I can say without reservation that the South Yuba River Canyon and its wildflowers in spring is one of the most beautiful areas in all of the state of California.
For many people, getting to the Yuba is almost as much fun as being in the Yuba.
And the fact that the total system is so diversified, it's like no other trails I've ever been on. And the fact you have a river, you have the mountains, you have the cliffs, you have a primitive and beautiful scenery. Everything is really fantastic.
So it's both accessible, and yet it's only accessible by walking, so you don't get, the people with the boom boxes and, all that kind of stuff.
So there are trails all over the place in this area, and almost all of them are historic trails, are interconnecting mines or former mining operations.
When I look at the trails on the Yuba, you sort of flash back to the old time when the miners built all the trails and these flumes, and you're connected with history in a beautiful sense.
Part of this history is preserved in the remarkable Independence Trail, said to be the nation's first disability access wilderness trail. One man's vision and drive has led to a cooperative effort among citizens, the California Department of Parks and Recreation, and the Bureau of Land Management. Several miles of an abandoned hydraulic mining canal have been rebuilt and converted into a trail for everyone.
With this trail, even though I still have to use a wheelchair, I'm kind of stuck with that. But at least I can get out there. You don't have motors running. You aren't on a paved highway with, cars whizzing by. You can get out there, get away from the noises of the city and of the highway, and get away from your car and, hike again. And I think that means a lot to a lot of people, and just kind of be with nature out there. When you can sit there and watch the water swirl around the rocks and into eddies and then make rapids. I really enjoy that. I like to watch water move. It's fascinating. Always has fascinated me.
We love the South Yuba in the summer, but I'll tell you the best time I like the South Yuba is in the spring when we get to kayak, and they get about 1,000 CSF down here, and this is a world-class kayak run, this South Yuba. It's a different river at every level. At lower water, it's pristine and kind of pool drop and very pretty. And after it starts raining, the quiet little eddies that are on the side disappear, and the holes that were benevolent and nice one time become roaring and nasty the next time.
It's continuous whitewater. I mean, from the bottom of one drop, you just barely got time to get started to the next one, and a lot of character in each one of the rapids.
It's a small channel, and I think that's part of the reason why it's different. There aren't really many rivers that have a small channel that really have a whitewater characteristic.
It doesn't flow often, it doesn't flow very long, but when it's flowing, it's a great river. But you have to respect it, and you have to understand your skills. It's not a place to take a rubber ducky or a Kmart kayak or something like that, because there are a lot of places that can be dangerous.
It's one of the most beautiful, most spectacular whitewater rivers that we know. And California has the best whitewater practically in the entire world.
Last week, for the very first time, we stayed at a bed and breakfast in Grass Valley. We saw gold in the water. That was kind of exciting. We got a taste of what it must have felt like to be in the gold rush. So we brought some cake pans back with us. We're going to try and make our fortune and retire early.
I used to hike in with a sluice box and a gold pan. It was just great to come out and dig in the river, and hard work. And sometimes you found some goodies and sometimes you didn't, but it was always fun. And I have 2 nice nugget earrings to prove it.
It's great recreation. I mean, it keeps me healthy, I know that. But it's something about it. This gold fever is a real thing. In my case, the minute I had a few flakes in my pan, I immediately got gold fever. And that literally means that you don't care if you get money out of it. You do it because you love to see that gold. And I got hooked. But I've probably gotten about a ½ ounce out of the South Yuba over the 6-year period. And it's all flakes, nothing big. I've never gotten what you'd say a nugget out of the South Yuba. But I have just as much fun because I almost always get gold when I go on the South Yuba.
Basically, you're talking, take my case, I've been mining for 22 years, and basically what I'm doing now is what I've always dreamt of doing. I've gotten away from the gasoline power altogether. I'm running a sluice box with a wheelbarrow, and I feel I could move just as much material with the wheelbarrow than I can with the dredge, and without the hassle of the gasoline, the oil, and the insecurity of having the dredge set on the river. It's just a better way of life. I don't hear the noise. I don't hear the. When I'm down there, to me, it's just like a church. It's so pure and so holy. It's just peace, and that's what I'm after anyway down there. I'm not. As far as the gold itself, it's a way to earn a living. But man, it's a one heck of a way of life. I mean, it's a beauty. Fresh air, the wild apples. I don't know. It's just filled with a perfume. The summers are just absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's just incredible, the deep
For many people, the Yuba is a place of deep meaning and power, a sacred place that has had a profound effect on their lives.
Is one of the things, but mostly this is for me anyway, it's a spiritual place. I went through some very important changes in my life right along this river here, and I think the river itself had a lot to do with that. So consequently, even though we went to some beautiful places, they never really felt as much as home as this does.
There are spiritual areas that I've come across all over the globe, and The Yuba River in Nevada County seems to be one of them. It's kind of like Mount Shasta or Sedona. There are just various areas that have a spiritual influence, and I believe this is one of them.
It's a part of my history. It's part of my soul, and if anything were to happen to it, it would be like ripping a part of my heart out.
Well, the Yuba is so special to me, among other reasons, that my daughter was baptized there, and it was such a special time of ritualizing her existence in our lives. We just joined with the river and took water from the river, and all kind of came together in the Yuba. And I never go there to this day where that's not in my mind.
It's the river and the valley that gave me just that taste of peace of mind that allowed me to realize that I was headed, hell-bent on destruction like, so many of the other Vietnam veterans that came back. 60,000 of them committed suicide by 1983, So the river did save me. It kept calling me back, it kept saying, come back here, get out of this mess, It's a great place to just sit and, just sort of let your mind rest, because the water just pulls all that, the disorder and the chaos right out of your head.
The constant flow of a wild and natural river system is a reminder of impermanence, of transience, of our very precious and precarious place within the whole of the cosmological system. And it gives us an opportunity to touch the beauty that has manifested itself over millions and millions of years.
It's a great place to be in love, and a great place to share with your lover. There's a power, there's a spirit, a definite spirit. Spirit in the rocks, a spirit in the water, spirit in the manzanita and the trees. And you just inhale this spirit, to be there with someone you love. That's a really special, special thing.
Other people come to the Yuba for a different kind of inspiration, for solitude, meditation, to take nature into their hearts, let it stir their imaginations, and flow out again through their art.
It's spring again. I'm worshiping the sun, seduced to nakedness by April's lure. Caress as long as hours pass and leave me limp with warmth, my skin enticed to gold.
I think I will hold on to all the summer stored here as I lie, breast and cheek pressed flush against the grainy flatness of my favorite rock, and wrap puckered fingers around the water-worn shoulders and bones of the earth until winter tries to creep up the canyon and into the river oak leaves fall.
The unconscious wind chased upstream by the sun's hot invitation. The shadows and birds and the forgiving native spirits in the bottom of pools and looking out atop the pine. They give the Yuba's name to all and to us.
Qualities of the natural landscape in this garden, and that the placement of plants and boulders and the pathways that were to be really inspired from the Yuba River and from aspects of the Yuba River that you come around a bend or a rock and all of a sudden it becomes like a new place. And it's not something that merely can be taken in from any one vantage point.
Howls at the moon! Dive, naked with God baptized, sheer canyon walls guides me through the rapids wild. Cleanse my eyes, pray to God I sing it true. 'Cause 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 'cause
and shut the door. Throw a bag of fruit down on the floor. Don't leave just yet, I think just one more. Who's gonna play at the Yuba? Over the hill toward North Bloomfield.
Oh, down by the Yuba River, maybe 6 months ago, I saw Yuba Sam. He was digging for gold, so I walked up to Yuba, mighty fine day, meeting Sam. He say, well, grab a pan and join in if you can. Na, 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 fee-fi, fiddly-fee, everybody ought to listen to me. Fee-fi, fiddly-fi, the Yuba just rolls on by.
Now you know why so many people love this place. It inspires, enchants, and uplifts. It's a center of life, a heartline, a source of power and joy for individuals, and a source of cultural richness and economic strength for the region. It's a place that connects us to the natural world and brings us together as community. So it is no wonder that hundreds of people have united to work on behalf of this remarkable place that has given so much to so many. Come, let's go down to the river and learn about some of the people who have worked in the name of this 39-mile stretch of the South Yuba. These are stories of visionaries, people called to action by a place they love. And they are stories of community, citizens and business, volunteering time, money, and muscle to see that this small piece of natural beauty will be saved and nurtured, a treasure for future generations to know and enjoy. The story of preservation begins in a most unlikely place, the devastated landscape of a hydraulic mine. It all started with Alvin Trevelpiece, a newspaper man who was fascinated by the history of hydraulic mining. In 1961, he proposed an idea for a park museum that would include the vast Malakoff diggings and what remained of the town of North Bloomfield. County leaders rallied around the idea with an eye toward tourism and recreation. A partnership with state and federal government was formed, and in 1965, after a great deal of work and cooperation, Malakoff Diggings State Historic Park became a reality. A 3,000-acre preserve reaching all the way to the river. Volunteers quickly came forward to help the state restore North Bloomfield, one building at a time. With this park, a new appreciation for the land and its history was beginning to grow in the watershed of the South Yuba. The next development came from the Bureau of Land Management in a move to increase recreational use of the river. In 1968, they joined with citizens to build campgrounds and over 10 miles of trail near the new state park. A fresh appreciation for the Yuba's beauty and recreational value was blossoming, just as the new wave of immigrants started to move into the region. Among the newcomers was a remarkable fellow who brought with him two dreams that would change the South Yuba forever. John Olmsted was a naturalist and college instructor. His heroes were park developers, John Muir, the father of Sierra Mountain Parks, and distant relative Frederick Law Olmsted, a designer of city parks, including New York's Central Park and Boston's Emerald Necklace, a series of parks linked by a common trail. In 1969, John Olmsted embarked on a hike across California with a dream of creating a unified necklace of parks and trails that would stretch from the Mendocino coast to Lake Tahoe. He chose a path that roughly followed Highway 20, where the public already owned large pieces of land. Olmsted was looking for the missing beads on the necklace, protected landscapes for the study of natural and cultural history. Eventually, his hike took him into the South Yuba Canyon, where he was inspired by the citizen-initiated Malakoff Park and the expanding BLM Trail. But it was the discovery of an abandoned water canal that changed the course of his life and gave shape to a second dream that had been inspired by a friend in 1965.
A woman in a wheelchair whose multiple sclerosis kept her away from mountains that I described to her as I took her through Golden Gate Park in her wheelchair. And she said, if you ever find a trail I can go on in the mountains, you'll have to tell me about it.
It was that one sentence that enabled Olmsted to look at the broken down hydraulic mining canal and see the potential for a wilderness trail, the gentle slope perfect for wheelchairs. Friends and students supported his idea with donations of money and labor. Together, they made a down payment on 550 acres of the canyon and set to work rebuilding the flumes and ditches to carry people instead of water. Olmsted and his wife Sally labored for 9 years on the trail, establishing a non-profit organization, writing legislation that formed a partnership with state parks, and enlisting the help of hundreds of volunteers and donors.
We had a huge work party of four-wheel drive clubs. We had telephone pioneers, and we had students, 4-H members, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, professionals working for half price, people from all the way.
With widespread community support and remarkable perseverance, the dream of the South Yuba Independence Trail became a reality. A wilderness trail for everyone, visited by thousands every year. Today, the trail continues to grow and be upgraded with hard work and cooperation between state parks, BLM, and citizen volunteers. Olmsted also continues to work on the Tahoe Pacific Necklace, networking across the state, looking for new land and supporters, always ready to draw a map in the palm of his hand to explain the concept.
And the great dream is to be able to walk or drive with short walks to see the wholeness of California in a series of sort of beads of a necklace. We then really create a kind of a college, a university of outdoor California that's available to everyone. We get back to John Muir's.
Over the years, Olmsted and his partners have helped to create 7 beads on the necklace, including State Park's purchase of land near the Bridgeport Covered Bridge in 1980. This was a key development as it fostered a new dream in the community, a system of trails that one day might extend all the way from park headquarters at Bridgeport to the Malakoff Historic Park in North Bloomfield. To date, about 75% of the necessary land and trail easements have been secured. Added to this great success, the Tahoe National Forest recently built another 11 miles of trail, extending wilderness access all the way to the Gold Rush village of Washington. The South Yuba is fast becoming one of the finest, most unique recreation education habitats in all of California. One of the jewels on a public heirloom necklace, a gift, a dream that will be passed on to children of the future. The next group to form in the name of the South Yuba are guardians of this jewel and a classic example of American democracy and grassroots organizing. It started in the heart of a man who fell in love with the river as a young boy.
Some of my earliest childhood remembrances were from the river. And as I grew older, the river always gave me a real sense of freedom and appreciation for the earth and the natural beauty.
He always thought the river would be there for his children. But in 1983, the Yuba was threatened with proposals for new dams.
It all started with that article in the paper saying they wanted to develop a hydro plant at the river. I responded with a letter to the editor saying that the river has a lot of recreation value and that there's a lot of people that really love it there. After I wrote that letter, that same night, Linda Miller gave me a call and she wanted to know what was being done about it.
And instead of the familiar, somebody ought to do something about that, I found myself saying, oh, no, they're not. And I had no idea what to do about it, but they were not going to do this.
A few people came together, a rough plan for educating the community was developed, and an organization was formed.
The South Yuba River Citizens League. The words were a little stiff, but we were going to be known as Circle. And that was what counted, and it just had the ring of a bunch of people working together in harmony, and that was our vision.
It snowballed so good that the community all came together. There was a lot more people like us than we realized. You know, there was people that really said, hey, you know, this is one of the beautiful spots we ever seen. We're not going to let it get destroyed. So they came out of the woodwork.
Don't let it change. Why can't you leave it alone?
Under the leadership of Dr. Roger Hicks, the volunteers of Circle created a nonprofit educational organization with over 1,000 members and many more supporters. A rough periodic newsletter was transformed into a professional quarterly. Annual events raised funds to establish an office and staff, and Circle became a strong, respected voice for the Yuba. In its first decade, this grassroots organization led the fight to stop 5 dam proposals and played a key role in developing the state park's South Yuba project. Circle then took action to protect the lower 39-mile segment of river from future damming.
The only way to protect this river and other rivers from dams is from federally licensed dams, is through the Federal Wild and Scenic River System. So we decided that that's what we need to do, is get federal wild and scenic protection for the South Yuba.
Circle organized and published the first wild and scenic river study. Dedicated volunteers and staff then worked to gain broad community support, including business, the vast majority of property owners on the river, and all of the agencies managing public land on the South Yuba.
The thing that I learned was how deep and broad the support for the river is. I mean, people in this community love the river. They love it.
What's happened on the South Yuba is that a community has come together to defend one of its members, and the member happens to be a river. And I think people who are fighting to save the South Yuba feel that if they can hang on to the South Yuba, then they can hang on to the world. Because in a way, the South Yuba River is every river.
Driven by a deep-seated love and commitment, Circle volunteers and others in the community continue the education and planning necessary to protect the Yuba River ecosystem, knowing all along that there are still development interests that would like to see more dams in the watershed. One proposal would destroy the wild spawning grounds of the salmon and steelhead that still exist below Inglebright Dam. Another plan is similar to the Bullard's Bar system on the middle and north forks of the Yuba, a large storage dam to trap the river's flow. Below the dam, a diversion wall to push the water into a tunnel out of its natural drainage. The downstream river would look something like this: less spring runoff to clean the shoreline, trees and bushes turning the river into a choked-up creek. Above the dam, miles of public and private land would be condemned and submerged underwater. The beautiful canyon habitat, the magical river, ravaged, stripped and transformed into a mud-lined water tank to provide a small amount of water for more population growth in a state already stressed by human numbers. 30 years ago, such a plan might have met with little opposition, but today, thanks to the people who have helped open the Yuba and educate others about its inherent values, there are thousands who know, love, and defend this stretch of river.
Save that river! Save
People have come together to say no, not this too, not this place for a water tank, not this most beautiful river canyon that nurtures us in so many ways, that has become part of our family histories. People have come together to say yes, our children deserve this place. Yes, we are working in the name of the planet and all its forms. Yes, yes, we cherish this precious piece of the sacred South Yuba.
Oh, the Yuba River, so wild and so free. I hope for all time that you will be a free-flowing river that we will not end. I will love you always, my friend. I will love you always, my friend.
I come to the end of this walkabout with deep gratitude for all the guides, mentors, and contributors I have met along the way. With their help, I have learned a great deal about the river, about myself, and about our culture. For the first time in my life, I feel that I know where I live and how it came to be the place it is today. But one of the most profound discoveries for me was seeing the South Yuba as a microcosm for understanding the three great stages in the human-Earth relationship. The first stage lasted for thousands of years, people intimately connected to their local region and to the cycles of nature, one species among many, one strand in the fabric of life. The second stage hit the Yuba only 150 years ago, as the values of the industrial age rushed in to seize control of the land. Nature was seen as an external force separate from us, something to be conquered and exploited with little restraint or concern. And now we're at the beginning of a third stage, what some have called the ecological age, a time for balancing human activities and population with the healthy, sustainable functioning of the natural world. A time for bringing love, humility, and respect to our relationship with other living things and with the air, water, and soil that supports us all. It's a time for putting our imaginations and technologies to work as members in the community of life, not lords and conquerors. The efforts to protect 39 miles of the South Yuba are expressions of this love and optimism in the name of future generations. To all the people who have taken part in the work on the Yuba, I say thank you. Thank you to all those who will join this effort and others like it all over the globe. Thank you to everyone who is trying to be part of a very difficult and basic change in human thought and behavior as we reassess our needs and desires, as we re-examine our relationship with nature, as we extend our moral embrace and concern farther into the natural world. May the protection of 39 South Yuba miles be one more step in humanity's quest for a more benevolent and balanced presence on our one and only beautiful watershed Earth.
It starts in the mountains, just a small fountain, a few drops of fresh melted snow. It leaps down the canyons, laughing and playing as it heads for the valley below. Oh, the Yuba River, so wild and so free, I hope for all time that you will be a free-flowing river that we will not end. I will love you always, my friend. We've damned you and shamed you, mined you and drained you, but your beauty continues to shine. Life plays on your boulders, I crawl on your shoulders and vow to fight for all time. Oh, the Yuba River, so wild and so free, I hope for all time that you will be a free-flowing river that we will not end. I will love you always, my friend. Sacred river, oh mother and giver, your flow must continue to run. If our sons and our daughters are to laugh by your waters, we must stand by your side in the sun. Oh, the Yuba River, so wild and so free, I hope for all time that you will be a free-flowing river that we will not end. I will love you always, my friend. Oh, the Yuba River, so wild and so free, I hope for all time that you will be a free-flowing river that we will not end. I will love you always, my friend. I will love you always, my friend.
From the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, a new hero will emerge. One who is ready. One who makes sure their friends and family are set. And has the power to go at a moment's notice. This fire season, you're the hero. We are Ready, Nevada County.
Fish in many California water bodies contain mercury at levels that can be harmful to human health if eaten.
Mama, what's that sign?
Oh, well, it looks like it's about fish in California lakes and reservoirs. So it looks like some fish are high in mercury and some fish are lower in mercury. Oh, here we go. Women 18 to 45 years, so that's me. And then kids, that's you. We can have less than older women and men. So Papa can have more fish than us.
What kind of fish can we eat?
Well, it looks like we can have more rainbow trout. That must be low in mercury. Oh, but you and I, we can't have any black bass, any carp, or any brown trout.
Papa brings us fish.
Yeah, he does. We should take a picture of this for him. Oh, and then look, there's a website we can go to for more information. That's good. All right, well, let's see if we can find some fish now.
The amount of fish you can safely eat depends on where you fish, what fish you eat, and who you are.
This is a story of gumption, perseverance, and damn luck. It starts with this man.
Charles Lytton was Einstein brilliant.
He was a genius, made countless contributions to the high technology of his time, vacuum tubes. In 1953, he moved from a young Silicon Valley to Grass Valley, California.
I think that's what happens, right? A lot of us, we found a way to get to Nevada City, Grass Valley, or we found it for the first time, and we don't want to leave.
Soon after, he talked his friend, Dr. Donald Hare, into starting his engineering business in the same mountain town.
Doc Hare, Grass Valley, I believe came to Grass Valley almost as much for the area as everybody else, but he knew Lytton.
Doc Hare and a small cadre of incredibly talented engineers quickly made their mark on a new technology that was captivating the world: television.
Grass Valley knew how to do things with a transistor that previously took a tube.
What came next is decades of innovation, ultimately leading to dozens of spin-offs and related technology companies who themselves made countless world-changing contributions.
How they got to television is this circuitous path of technology that I don't think anyone would ever predict.
The fact that any of this happened at all is technically improbable.